question concerns the use of liquid-tight flexible metal conduit, often abbreviated as LT flex conduit, in conjunction with package units, specifically in scenarios where a factory-installed remote panel board is or is not present. The initial statement specifies that listed package units utilizing a factory-installed remote panel board are permitted to be connected with not more than 6 feet of LT flex conduit. However, the question arises regarding the permissibility of using LT flex conduit when the package unit does not have a remote panel board. The answer to this question is that the absence of a remote panel board in the package unit does not inherently prohibit the use of LT flex conduit. The code language provided only addresses the specific situation where a remote panel board is present. It does not explicitly forbid the use of LT flex conduit in other circumstances. To determine the acceptability of using LT flex conduit in situations where the package unit lacks a remote panel board, it is necessary to consult other relevant sections of the applicable electrical code, such as the National Electrical Code, or NEC. These sections will provide general guidelines and restrictions on the use of flexible conduits in various applications. When considering the use of LT flex conduit, several factors must be taken into account, regardless of whether a remote panel board is present. Firstly, the conduit must be properly sized to accommodate the conductors it will contain. The NEC specifies fill requirements that limit the number and size of conductors that can be installed in a particular size of conduit. These fill requirements are designed to prevent overheating and ensure proper heat dissipation. Secondly, the conduit must be adequately supported and secured. The NEC provides specific requirements for supporting and securing flexible conduits, including maximum distances between supports. Proper support is essential to prevent strain on the conduit and its connections. Thirdly, the conduit must be terminated correctly using approved fittings. Fittings must be suitable for use with liquid-tight flexible metal conduits and must provide a secure and watertight connection. Incorrectly installed fittings can lead to water ingress and corrosion, which can compromise the integrity of the electrical system. Fourthly, the conduit must be used in accordance with its listing and labeling. LT flex conduit is typically listed by a recognized testing laboratory such as Underwriters Laboratories or UL. The listing indicates the specific applications for which the conduit is suitable and any limitations on its use. Fifthly, the applicable electrical code must be consulted to determine any specific requirements or restrictions for the use of flexible conduits in a particular application. The NEC contains numerous sections that address the use of flexible conduits in various settings, including hazardous locations, healthcare facilities, and commercial buildings. In the case of a package unit without a remote panel board, the use of LT flex conduit may be permissible if it complies with all applicable requirements of the electrical code. This may include providing a flexible connection between the package unit and the building's electrical system, or providing a means of protecting conductors from physical damage or environmental factors. It is important to note that the authority having jurisdiction, or OJ, has the final say in interpreting and enforcing the electrical code. The AHJ may have specific requirements or interpretations regarding the use of LT flex conduit in certain situations. Therefore, it is always advisable to consult with the AHJ before installing LT flex conduit in a package unit without a remote panel board. In addition to the NEC, other relevant standards and guidelines may also apply. For example, the manufacturer's instructions for the package unit may specify certain requirements or restrictions on the use of flexible conduits. Similarly, local building codes or ordinances may contain additional requirements that must be followed. When selecting LT flex conduit, it is important to consider the environmental conditions to which it will be exposed. LT flex conduit is available in various materials and constructions, each with its own specific properties and limitations. For example, some types of LT flex conduit are more resistant to corrosion or ultraviolet radiation than others. The choice of conduit should be based on the specific environmental conditions present at the installation site. Furthermore, the selection of fittings is equally important. The fittings must be compatible with the conduit and must provide a watertight seal. Fittings are available in various materials, including steel, aluminum, and plastic. The choice of fitting material should be based on the conduit material and the environmental conditions. The installation of LT flex conduit should be performed by a qualified electrician who is familiar with the applicable electrical codes and standards. The electrician should carefully inspect the conduit and fittings before installation to ensure that they are free from defect. The electrician should also follow the manufacturer's instructions for installation. Proper installation is essential to ensure the long-term reliability and safety of the electrical system. In summary, the absence of a remote panel board on a package unit does not automatically prohibit the use of LT flex conduit. The permissibility of using LT flex conduit in such situations depends on compliance with all applicable requirements of the electrical code, as well as any other relevant standards or guidelines. It is always advisable to consult with the authority having jurisdiction and a qualified electrician before installing LT flex conduit in a package unit without a remote panel board. Remember to consult the latest edition of the National Electrical Code, or NEC, for the most up-to-date requirements. Key sections to review would include Article 348, which covers flexible metal conduit, or FMC, and Article 350, which covers liquid-tight flexible metal conduit, or LFMC. Also, pay close attention to the listing and labeling requirements as outlined in Article 110.3. Understanding these sections is crucial for ensuring compliance and safety. Additionally, consider the specific environment in which the package unit is installed. Is it subject to moisture, chemicals, or extreme temperatures? These factors will influence the type of LT flex conduit and fittings that are appropriate for the application. For example, in a corrosive environment, a corrosion-resistant conduit and fittings should be used. It's also important to consider the ampacity of the conductors that will be installed in the conduit. The NEC specifies dirting factors that must be applied when multiple conductors are installed in a single conduit. These dirting factors reduce the allowable ampacity of the conductors to prevent overheating. The electrician should calculate the derated ampacity of the conductors and ensure that it is sufficient for the intended load. Remember to properly bond and ground the LT flex conduit. The NEC requires that all metal conduits be bonded and grounded to provide a path for fault current to return to the source. This helps to protect against electric shock and reduce the risk of fire. The bonding and grounding connections must be made in accordance with the NEC requirement. The correct selection and installation of LT flex conduit and fittings is critical for ensuring the safety and reliability of the electrical system. Always follow the applicable codes and standards and consult with a qualified electrician if you have any questions. Consider also the long-term maintenance of the LT flex conduit system. Regularly inspect the conduit and fittings for signs of damage or corrosion. Replace any damaged or corroded components promptly. Also, ensure that the conduit is properly supported and secure to prevent it from sagging or becoming dislodged. Proper maintenance will help to extend the life of the LT flex conduit system and prevent costly repairs. Another factor to consider is the flexibility of the LT flex conduit. While it is designed to be flexible, it should not be subjected to excessive bending or twisting. Excessive bending or twisting can damage the conduit and compromise its integrity. The electrician should ensure that the conduit is installed in a way that minimizes stress and strain. Always use the correct tools for installing LT flex conduit and fittings. Using the wrong tools can damage the conduit or fittings and compromise the integrity of the connection. Follow the manufacturer's instructions for using the tools. For example, use a conduit bender specifically designed for flexible metal conduit to avoid kinking or flattening the conduit. In summary, the decision to use LT flex conduit with a package unit that does not have a remote panel board requires careful consideration of several factors. These factors include the applicable electrical codes and standards, the environmental conditions, the ampacity of the conductors, and the proper installation and maintenance procedures. By following these guidelines, you can ensure that the LT Flex conduit system is safe, reliable, and compliant with all applicable requirements. Also keep in mind that local amendments to the NEC may exist. These local amendments can vary depending on the jurisdiction and may impose additional requirements or restrictions on the use of LT flex conduit. It is important to check with the local authority having jurisdiction to determine if any local amendments apply to your project. Furthermore, the specific requirements for LT flex conduit may vary depending on the type of package unit being installed. For example, package units used for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning or HVAC systems may have different requirements than package units used for other purposes. Consult the manufacturer's instructions for the package unit to determine if there are any specific requirements for LT flex conduit. When installing LT flex conduit in a concealed location such as above a ceiling or within a wall, it is important to ensure that the conduit is accessible for inspection and maintenance. The NEC requires that all electrical equipment be accessible unless it is specifically designed and listed for inaccessible locations. Provide access panels or other means of access to the conduit as needed. Also consider the potential for future modifications or additions to the electrical system. Install the LT flex conduit in a way that allows for future expansion or changes. This may involve using larger conduit sizes or providing additional pull boxes or junction boxes. Planning for the future can save time and money in the long run. Remember that electrical work can be dangerous. Always follow safe work practices and wear appropriate personal protective equipment, or PPE, when working with electricity. To energize the circuit before working on any electrical equipment and verify that the circuit is dead using a voltage tester. If you are not qualified to perform electrical work, hire a licensed electrician. Lastly, documentation is key. Keep accurate records of all electrical work performed, including the type and size of LT flex conduit used, the location of the conduit, and any modifications or additions made to the system. This documentation can be helpful for future troubleshooting or maintenance.